Well, good morning. It is Thursday, March 20th, and today I'm going to do a little something different. I want to share a skill with you that I learned years ago, and I've been baking bread for pretty much all my life, and I do that every week. And I thought, well, now that we can't go into coffee shops, we can't go into a lot of bakeries, and in the grocery stores are starting to run out of things. So I'm going to show you a very simple recipe to make bread that is absolutely delicious, and it's easy for anyone to do. You need 4 simple ingredients. You need some flour, you need yeast, it doesn't matter if that's instant or if it's traditional, a little bit of salt, and you need some warm water. That's it, and a bowl. When you're using a bowl, plastic, glass, Tupperware, anything will work, just don't use a metal bowl. Okay, you need, and I'm not good with recipes because I've been doing this for so long, I don't have the exact amounts, but you're going to put in about 4 cups of flour into the bowl. Okay, one. Now my measures aren't really that accurate, so I'm probably just going to do about 3 and a little bit here because I have them heaping. You can't go wrong with this, so don't worry. You don't need exact measurements. Okay, and put some flour in there. Take a little bit of yeast. I put about this much in my hand, which is maybe about half a teaspoon. Sprinkle that over the top. A bit of salt in your hand. This is probably about 1 teaspoon. I know some of you that are saying, well, why are you putting salt? Salt actually helps creating the rising of the yeast to do stuff. I don't know, it's magic, but you need a little bit of salt to make bread turn out well. Take a fork, mix your ingredients around. Don't have to go too crazy on it. And then with water, water's going to activate the yeast. Now you want water that is lukewarm. The easiest way to describe it, if you were going to put a baby in a bathtub, about that temperature. There's a wide range in between, so don't worry. You just don't want it to be like a hot tub because that would kill your yeast. You're going to add a little water in. Don't worry, there's no measure to this because we're actually going to be mixing this to get a certain consistency. Those of you that might have made dough before, you're thinking to yourself, well, I'm going to have to knead it and stuff. There's no kneading in this. We're going to make a very moist dough. And I'll explain along later why we're making it so moist, but really what we're trying to get to is a consistency of peanut butter. So not the sort of stuff that you could roll out on a table. Okay, we're starting to get there a little bit. If you notice here, I'm going to show this to you here, we're starting to get to something that isn't really like a lot of a traditional dough. You couldn't make a pizza out of this at all. Okay, going to just scrape around a little bit. There we go. So this is kind of ooey and gooey. And that's what you want. And it doesn't matter if you get a little bit too dry, add a little bit more moisture. If it's a bit too wet, add a little bit more flour inside. So once you have that done, that's really it. You're going to make this a day before because we're going to let this rise for a day, so it's going to have a slow rise, and that means that we're not going to have to worry about kneading it. It'll form its gluten strands all the way through. Cover it up with a little bit of saran wrap, and then let it sit. We're going to let it sit for a day. Now that doesn't matter if it's 18 hours, 24 hours, or 30 hours, it's still going to come out right. Okay, so now that your dough's risen for a day, here's the next step you're going to do. If you have a tea towel, cloth, doesn't matter what kind you have, you're going to lay that out on a flat surface. And if you have cornmeal, sprinkle it just a little bit on the bottom here. It's going to keep things from sticking. If you don't have cornmeal, don't worry. A little bit of flour on the top dusted is going to help and do perfectly fine. Okay, next I want to prepare a surface that I'm going to put my dough onto. So I'll take a little bit of flour and we'll just sprinkle that around. Maybe a little bit more for good measure. Okay. Now the magic of camera. I did a dough yesterday. This has been sitting for 24 hours. I'm going to take the plastic off it now. And what's been happening is that yeast and the flour and the water, it's all combined and it started to rise, and because we've left it for 24 hours, it's made these really nice gluteny strands across it. That's going to make that bread incredibly wonderful, and it almost looks like it's bubbling. This is very similar to if you were trying to make a sourdough starter. It's going to have a lot of that texture in the bread later on. Now, this dough here is very sticky because we have a higher moisture content. And all we need to do now is put a little bit of flour on your hands. Okay, and as you tilt it, you're going to see that those strands are actually trying to stick. So just at the top, start to peel them back a little bit. There you go, just like that. And then eventually, all of that dough is going to work its way onto the table. Tuck it away a little bit more flour. Just put a little bit on the top, a little bit on your hands. Now this is the part where you don't have to knead. A lot of people are afraid of making bread because they think they're going to have to knead and you got to be really strong. This bread I'm showing you today doesn't need any of that. All we're going to do is we're just going to gently try to move it away. We're going to turn it, roll it over a few times. We're not kneading it, we're not trying to break anything down. We're just making sure that it's coated on the outside with flour. Okay? And when it's nicely coated, do nothing more. We're going to lift it up. We're going to put it on the cloth that has the cornmeal on it. And we're going to take a little bit more cornmeal. Sprinkle that on the top, just like so. Take one more cloth or tea towel. Stick it on. And that's it. We're not going to do anything else. We're going to let that sit for 2 hours. If it sits for 3 hours, it doesn't matter. When you're about an hour away from putting your bread inside the oven, you need to preheat your pot. I'm using a glass Visionware pot. It's got a lid on it. So the lid's important. You need to have a lid, and you want to ideally have a pot that's got a little bit of weight to it. So if you got one of these glass ones, or if you have one of the cast iron Dutch oven style ones, and if you don't have that, that's all right. A regular pot with a lid is going to do. The reason we want something that's a little bit heavier, ideally, it's going to retain the heat. I've preheated the oven to 450 degrees, and we're going to stick the pot inside the oven just so it gets really nice and hot right up to that temperature, and just let it sit. Right, we've had our dough rising for the last couple of hours. We just need to take the top cover off, and you'll see that it's all expanded nicely. We're going to get our pot out of the oven. It's been in there for an hour at 450 degrees. It should be nice and hot. Let's open it up. Put it on the top. Remove your lid. Okay, now secret to this, we're not going to grab our dough by hand and put it in the pot. We're going to take a corner, another corner, hold this one in your other hand, take it over to your pot, and we're just going to kind of drop it into the pot. That's simple. Remember, put your gloves on before you grab the lid. Stick that lid on so it's nice and sealed. And let's put this in the oven. It's going to sit covered in the oven for about 30 minutes. Remember I told you I was going to tell you why we were making the dough so moist? What we're trying to duplicate here is the same effect that you get in a steam oven in a bakery. So all that moisture that was inside the dough, extra that you normally have, when we put it into that hot pot and we put the lid on it, all that moisture just comes out. And what it'll do is it'll form a really thick crust. You're going to be amazed. This is going to taste as good as any bakery bread out of the bread came from a French bakery. It's going to be spectacular. So let's just leave it in there for 30 minutes. The bread's been in for 30 minutes now. It's time to open up the oven and remove the lid. All right, now 45 minutes has elapsed since we first put the bread in the oven. Time to take it out. Oh, that looks good. Isn't that amazing? You'll need a spoon just to break away the edge. And all you're gonna do is lift it out, put it on a cooling rack. Tempting to want to eat it right away, but you do need to let it settle. So maybe about 15-20 minutes of letting it cool, it'll be ready to go. Doesn't that look amazing? There you go, so simple. Always comes out. You can't go wrong with this recipe. So you've learned a new skill that you can, if you're stuck inside during this COVID-19 crisis, that you can make bread for your family. But I'm going to ask you to take it one step further. Why not make a loaf for a neighbor, a senior in your area, or maybe someone that's just feeling a little bit down? it would cheer them up, and it's a great thing that is easy to do. Thanks very much. Stay safe, stay healthy. Please click subscribe now for my newest cooking videos. A printable recipe and ingredients list can be found on my blog page. You'll find the link in the video description box. Thank you and have a great day.